you take a deep breath and you look at this Nebraska team, and it is the classic trajectory of a Matt Rhule program. I was looking this up. At Temple, he went 2-10. Then he went 6-6, and then 10-win, 10-win. Then he goes to Baylor, which is involved in a hellacious scandal. He goes 1-11, 7-6, 11-3. Then he goes to Carolina. And Nebraska, we're now at 5-7 and bang 2-0. And they're staring at a schedule where they've got Northern Iowa. I don't want to play Northern Illinois. Northern Iowa, Illinois, at Purdue, Rutgers, at Indiana. Not simple. But the possibility is there that they are 7-0 heading into Ohio State. And the momentum of this program is going. Recruiting has picked up. They landed the top 100 in-state player this week, beating Oklahoma and Notre Dame. Matt Rhule is very confident. He's a very confident coach. And I think a lot of people in college football have kind of known this name, but he did it at Temple, he did it at Baylor, and then he's always moving before he actually makes a real impact. This is not a guy who's going to move from Nebraska, I don't think. His quote after the game at some point was about the Colorado game, which they won, was it 28-10 at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But it was at least 28-3 most of the game. I expected the game to go that way. I expected us to score 40 points in that game and hold them to about 10. And he talked about how, all due respect for Colorado, they play hard. He wasn't saying it in a trashy way, but he's confident. Matt Rhule is a confident coach. He is a capable coach. And I think if you're Nebraska or you're the rest of the country that's kind of looking and being like, yeah, Nebraska never really gets good, maybe you got to keep an eye on the Huskers. Pat, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the reasons I think we were all well sold on the hire of Matt Rhule to begin with, because we've seen him do it at places that had less going for them than Nebraska inherently does. And if you can win at Temple and you can win at Baylor, I don't care what happened to the Carolina Panthers. That's a tire fire with him or without him. And he came in to Nebraska, and I think he just brings a competence and an idea of what it takes to win. And then he goes and gets Dylan Rhule. And I like his coaching staff. Tony White's the defensive coordinator who done very good work at Arizona State. Arizona State and Syracuse. And he previously had worked under Rocky Long, who, if you know his defensive coaching tree, tends to produce really solid coaches. So you combine the elements there, and it's going to happen. It may happen this year. Maybe this is a little premature. Colorado may stink. They are not a well-constructed football team, so they've beaten Colorado and they've beaten UTEP. So not much really on the resume yet, but they got trucked by Colorado last year. So the year-over-year improvement is pronounced. And I think they're set up here for it could be a really good run into late October. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves in the Big Ten. Bielema could throw a surprise at you. Purdue might be better than we think. Rutgers isn't bad. New coach at Indiana. But I could see October 26th, Nebraska at Ohio State being a really interesting game.
Yeah, and I think we kind of they were them and Rutgers, I feel like, were the two kind of sleeper-ish picks, Nebraska and Rutgers in the Big Ten, to maybe make a run or have a better season than expected. And I think why many picked Nebraska as that team is because of Rhule's track record, as Dan kind of went through. Year two, in year three, he makes incredible improvements, and it just felt like, I don't know. It's weird. It just kind of felt like a guarantee with him that he's going to win there. I don't know why, but I did visit there a few months ago, and I think you guys have both been there, but like they have this brand new facility they just opened, and it is incredible. It is just, it will wow you. It's beautiful. They have they got all the tools, right? They've got all the resources. They've got the fans. interest and the passionate fan base like they do. They're the only thing in town, quite literally, only thing in state, quite literally. And so they just needed that coach, and I think they got it. I think he was the hire of the 22-23 cycle. Matt Rhule was. He was the guy. And now we're seeing it come to fruition. And the expectation was obviously high around the offense with Rhule and all that. And I know they just played UTEP in Colorado, but it was like 2 touchdowns in 2 games. And it does appear that the old black shirts might be back, Dan.
Black shirts might be back. And I don't even really know about this year. I don't know if they can get to 7-0. That's a lot to ask a team that's on. Like, you can sit there and go, oh, they should be favored in those games, but it's hard to put those week to week together. Like you said, Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers are not, and maybe even Indiana. Those are not like, this isn't Ohio State playing those guys.
Right.
Yeah. I haven't been this bullish on Nebraska since not long after they entered the Big Ten, and you started to see the recruiting shift, and they weren't getting the players because they do have everything there. It is an incredible place to see a game. The campus is great. The fans are unbelievable. There's now NIL money everywhere, both legit. We'll get to that. Legitimate NIL, because Dylan Rhule is the biggest star in the state of Nebraska. Okay, like if you are legitimately own a business in Nebraska, you want Dylan Rhule hawking your cars, hawking your financial services, whatever it is, you want that guy in your commercial. Not fake, real NIL. But there's also the other NIL, because they're going to make their, they got all the money. They've got everything you want. If their problem was proximity to players. And they were able to do it for a long time. But when they got to the Big Ten, it all shifted. They were trying all sorts of gimmicks. Calabraska, they would try to get all these kids from California that were willing to go to Nebraska. Those guys tended to be guys that weren't really all that good.
Because those two places are so similar.
I know. It was like a marketing concept. And you're like, and I remember like a West Coast guy, like, yeah, those are the guys that USC isn't going after, right?
Yeah.
Because you can just be Calabraska in California. But you're getting these guys. They were trying a lot of different things. Pelini was a good coach, but not enough. And he kind of was a little rough around the edges. So
yeah,
borderline insane. Yeah,
I think we did this once, where it's like, who was the guy that transferred from Michigan basketball to Kansas? Dickinson.
Yeah.
And he said Kansas is the real Midwest. They're nice. And I was like, Bo Pelini is technically from the Midwest. He's from Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah.
And I applaud it, because I live in Metro Detroit, like mean as hell, right? And then there's Nebraska. Like there's nothing in common between a Nebraska and what's going on in Youngstown, Ohio.
No,
they're the Midwest, but yeah, that's not the same thing. Anyway, the problem was like, okay, you took the money, you found stability, because the Big 12 was, Texas and Oklahoma almost left back then without even telling Nebraska. So you found your stability, but you never had something where I was like, okay, this is going to work. Rhule comes in, I'm like, this might work. And early returns is like, I want to see this team next year, 2 years. They could be really good. This program could get really, really good to where it is a legit. They got to thread a needle here for the playoff, but next year they might not, the year after. And if I'm a Nebraska fan, I am over the moon at that concept that, we're not ever going to be what they were, where you're just winning 40 games in a row and stuff, but we're relevant again, and we're going to get more relevant.
Yeah. That the fact is Dylan Rhule is going to be there for 2 more years, unless something weird happens. So that's a wonderful building block right there. And you think if he's going to pan out to be as good as it appears he can be, you're going to be bringing in receivers. You're going to be getting linemen. You're going to, the skill positions, and all the offensive players will probably follow. And Matt Rhule almost always has a good defense too. So the combinations are all there. And as you said, Dan, yes, once they're tasting success now, they continue to taste it. those fans got an appetite. The NIL train will keep rolling for whatever they feel like they need to put around Dylan Rhule.